Welcome to the Spooner Q&A. I am Roberto, and I'll have the pleasure of being your host for tonight. I'll soon be joined by two very special guests. One of them is Milana a software engineering lead here at Bending Spoons, and the other, Federico Simeonato, a product lead here at Bending Spoons still. Naturally, you're not interested in what I have to say, but rather what they have to say. So we'll get straight into it. Some of the questions will be about their experience, the personal experience, joining Bending Spoons, what they did, what they found useful. And I'm sure that many of you will be able to relate, since we know that a good number of participants tonight are actually in the application process. So let's get started with the first question, which is for Federico. How is Bending Spoons organized, and what does Bending Spoons look like from the inside?
Well, good evening, everybody, and good evening, Rob. You can imagine Bending Spoons as a company with two layers. So there's a horizontal layer that we call the platform, and the vertical business units or products, such as WeTransfer, Evernote, Meetup, or Remini. The platform layer exists to support the business units by basically centralizing a lot of work. There are a few examples. One example is recruiting, for instance. It doesn't make sense for the StreamYard team to have a StreamYard recruiting team inside it. Another very good example is foundations technology. It's a fundamental layer that develops deep technology expertise, like user acquisition technology or libraries that are shared across all the apps and products that Bending Spoons works on, that then can be applied to each business unit autonomously. And so basically each product can benefit from the work done by foundations technology. And so yeah, basically these business units are cross-functional product teams that work on one product or one set of products, where you'll generally find software engineers, data scientists, designers, product managers, customer support managers, etc., to work on in a very lean way, in a very focused way, thanks to this platform that takes care of many centralized and share streams of work, basically.
Thank you. That was incredibly interesting. Now, for a second question, now that we have a better idea of what Bending Spoons as an organization looks like, I would like to ask Milana something that I'm sure many people who are joining us tonight can relate to. What in particular led you, first of all, good evening, what in particular led you to join Bending Spoons? What was your path to the company?
Good evening, Rob, and everyone. So my personal story might be a bit different than the rest. I actually really wanted to join a startup 4 years ago. But Bending Spoons was actually even my second choice. I was really afraid of, entering a big corporation where there's going to be endless meetings, limited growth, and a lot of constraints. So I was looking for really a small environment, a startup vibes. And Bending Spoons happened to be interesting for me, but not really my first choice. We were 150 at the time. And during the interview process, somehow I completely fell in love with the people, with culture. It seemed very different. And in the end, I just decided to take a leap of faith, to trust my own gut and, give it a try. And I was definitely right. Like, I couldn't believe, because basically Bending Spoons is like multiple small startups within a big organization. And I really found everything I was looking for.
So you kind of got the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Best of both worlds, well said.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Now, a question for you, Fede. After somebody joins, of course, they experience career growth, career path. And what did that look like for you? Can you share something about your journey, the different phases, what happened?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I have somewhat of an uncommon journey behind me, but I'll give you my experience. So I started studying at university in Bologna, but I soon dropped out after more or less 1.5 years. I dropped out because I wanted to build a startup, and I wanted to start working. I wasn't satisfied with the level of challenge at university. I wanted something more concrete. And so I started this company in Rome, Italy, and we raised some capital from investors. We moved there to launch this product. It was a product for dentists and doctors. I basically started doing a little bit of everything, but very soon I specialized on product management. And then after 3 or 4 years, the company is still live, but after 3 or 4 years, I wanted a change. I wasn't necessarily looking for a job, but I found out about bending spoons, and I fell in love with the, especially at first with the communication style. I really liked how fresh it was and how honest it was. And so I joined. I first started working on live quiz a couple weeks after I joined. We started with this live quiz product, which was a super cool project to work on. It was a real-time trivia app where twice a day people would connect together and answer questions in real time against each other. And those who would get all 12 questions correctly, they would share a prize. And it went viral, and so it was like a very, it was an ecstatic moment. It was full of emotions. Eventually, I think we had 1.8 million registered users in Italy, which, like, for a 60 million people countries was quite the success. And then I started working on Splice after Live Quits. A few months after we acquired it, I worked on Splice for a while. For 1.5 or 2 years, I worked on a team that had the goal to basically create new exploratory projects. And then after working on that, I started working in product management at Evernote, and I started leading product management at Evernote, which was another incredible adventure, and still is, because we had the opportunity to improve how Evernote works. And then recently I started contributing to WeTransfer and Issue as well, and so now I work on these 3 products.
Thank you very much for your answer. Now, another thing that many people wondered about, many people asked, is what does the day-to-day life of a software engineer or software engineering lead at Bending Spoons look like? And so I'd like you, Milana, to tell us a bit more about what it's like to live a day in your life in a way.
Sure. It's really a tough question. It's quite different, I would say, every day. I'm sorry. Do you hear me well?
I hear you
I
fine.
had some. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really depends, really, from day to day. Some days they're just software engineering days. They're filled with coding, solving a challenge, a bug, developing a new feature or a design document. The other days, in software engineering and Bending Spoons, we are heavily involved in product in definition of features. So the other days I would be maybe going through Figma design, discussing with data analysts or with product managers and QA how to shape the next feature. Probably trying to find ways, to kind of decrease engineering time while bringing the same value to users through the feature. Other days they will be all about coaching. Maybe we have a new joiner or a more junior team member. We would pair program or do a lot of PR reviews, knowledge sharing, or similar things. And I mean, some days are like this, right? Like full of recruiting events or the interviews or just helping another team in the company. So it's really different, and I would say it really depends. You get to do a lot of stuff. if one thing is really important for me, it's planning. Beginning of every week, I would sit down, really properly plan, based on the my personal priorities and goals and team's goals. Plan the specific time slots when I can do the focused, deep work. And then around that, of course, a lot of things can pop up and happen as well.
Of course. So even as a lead, you still get involved with actual coding, actual programming.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Leads in vending spoons tend to be very hands-on. So it's very important to continue, mastering the art of software engineering. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you very much. Now, Simio, a question for you that, as I mentioned, many people that are following us tonight are in the application process. And so they're wondering, what if I get in? What are the expectations for a new spooner in the first months on the job?
Well, first of all, good luck. I would say the most important things are what you should do and what you should not do, in a sense. Meaning that I think it's very important in the first few months to demonstrate very strong passion for what you do, and demonstrate that you care about the work we do together and on our products, and care about what our customers need, and demonstrate drive and this ability to learn on your own, and not just learn because somebody is teaching you something, but also to solve problems autonomously, and the initiative to get something started if you think it's important enough. We highly value independence and autonomy and self-starters. One thing that you probably should not do instead, generally speaking, is trying to demonstrate that you know everything, because it's literally impossible that that's the case. Not only because you just joined, but also because I don't think that anybody at Bending Spoons knows everything. And so my advice to new spooners that join my teams are always to try to take the first few months as a gift, and learn as much as they can, and don't worry about looking ignorant, because that it's obvious that happens, and it's fine. And so take those months as a training and learning period where they can feel free to ask all the dumb questions, basically. Now, when it comes to PMs specifically, there are a few things more in the details of what we do that I think help a lot. One of these is getting a solid data training, meaning that a PM should be able to extract the data that they need, not necessarily for huge analysis or huge notebooks, but if you have a question about how a product works or how some users are interacting with it, you should not be blocked by the absence in that specific moment of a data analyst, for instance, to answer your question. You should be able, for a variety of questions, to autonomously find out the answer to that. The other thing a great PM should do in the beginning is probably to develop a habit of talking to customers. And so it's very easy to do. You just need to sit down and have some calls with people who use the products. We have the luck of working on products that are pretty heavily used and that people enjoy using. So they are very they really care about giving us feedback. So it's usually these are usually constructive conversations. And so this kind of gives you this sort of sense of empathy for customers. And then the last thing is probably more like a meta advice, to get to know as many team members as you can, in the sense that that moment is when you start developing the relationships with people that you work with, and so you're encouraged to come to the office, even if long term you don't want to live in Milan. We still organize ways for you to be there in person to meet people in real life, and create these relationships which really helps in the long run, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. There is a follow-up question specifically on PMs. People in the chat are wondering if, as a product lead, you work on the code, you choose the strategy or the architecture of the code, or do you only decide where the team is going directionally, and then other people are tasked with the specific things that need to be done?
So me personally, it's been a long while since the last day I wrote a line of code. Unfortunately, I never really developed that ability to a good level. So I generally don't do it. But there are many product managers at Bending Spoons that sometimes write their own code for small features or for small MVPs that we want to run. So it's definitely something that we don't discourage at all. Actually, we try to encourage it as much as we can. So yeah, what I work on is a lot of prioritization and a lot of understanding what people are doing with the products, both on the data side of things and on the qualitative conversations and surveys, and understanding what people are doing with the product. So both deciding what to do next and trying to understand how people are interacting with the product today.
It's very cool. Very, very cool. Now, for next question, building upon what Fede just said, just hinted to, that is, different people have different approaches. I'd like to ask Milana, how is success defined at Bending Spoons, in your opinion? That is, what are the different ways that you can be impactful? And then, of course, what opportunities exist for growth once you are impactful?
It's a tough question. I don't think there is only one way that we define success, or that there's only one way to, that you can be successful. I mean, the basic answer would be, doing good for the company and for your teammates, which we call spooners. I think first thing that really distinguishes Bending Spoons with regard to other companies, or the misconception, let's say, that people common have, is that the only way to progress is to, go toward managerial or lead position. We actually think there's a lot of ways to make impact in the company through individual contribution, and we've had some spooners who've been with us for years, 5, 6, 7 years, who always stayed in the individual contribution role, simply expanding their skills throughout, different technologies, and progressing in individual contributor role without ever, let's say, laddering up, because it simply requires also different set of skills and different path that it's very individual eventually. And if I think about, successful spooner, I would say that for sure, ownership is a common trait that every successful spooner has. Really strong ownership, which means, this brings me back a bit to these startup vibes I mentioned before, because it's really acting as if, this team, this company is your own, feeling it a big responsibility toward every effort that you tackle, and making sure that it goes to the finish line in the best way possible, or in the best way that you know. Then I'm personally, I also think like incremental improvements are a big part of the way we work, and what makes Bending Spoons great and people successful, because if you come to workplace every day with the idea of, I'm gonna try to be just slightly better version of myself today than I was yesterday, at that point, the growth happens with time, inevitably. And we apply this mindset both to our products and to our personal growth. Like we simply try to, incrementally improve by a little every day, and make this step to be better version of ourselves, or again of our to make our products better. And I would say, lastly, is definitely team play. Um, you know, you could be the smartest, the most hardworking, the most talented person in the world, but you can only achieve so much alone. And this is always true. Being surrounded by people who are equally or more smart, hardworking, and who are relentlessly, pursuing the same goal, not only increases the chances of success, but it also enhances your own personal growth by a lot. So I would say that really trying every day to be the best spooner, the best teammate to our to other spooners, helping them out and seeking help from them is what drives success here in bending spoons. Yeah.
Great. Now, let's get a bit more into the technical side of things. Some people in the chat, but also in the questions submitted beforehand, were wondering how do we approach having such a diverse tech stack. So I'd like to ask you, are most software engineers at Bending Spoons full stack?
Yeah, we tend to we try to shape what we call T-shaped engineers. T-shaped because of a letter, like letter T. It means that we try to specialize in one vertical. So we try to specialize in a single technology, not technology, but let's say area, so front end, back end infrastructure, and at the same time to have a broad understanding, overview, and skill set to tackle problems across the whole tech stack. And this is because we firmly believe that the cost of switching focus and understanding the scope of problem is way higher than learning a new technology. I'll give you a situation. Imagine that we've been developing a complex feature with a very refined UI and very, peculiar, let's say, design requirements. And backend part has been done for over a week now, and the backend engineer has moved to another project. Yet, I'm finalizing these final UI details, and at that point, I realized that I need another field in a response that I'm receiving from backend. At this point, you have two ways to go, right? Like I can go to backend engineer, ask them to stop what they're currently working on, whatever new task they took on, explain them the context, why I need, what I need, ask them to implement this, wait for their implementation, and at that point, continue with my work and finalize the feature. This has cost of interrupting his ongoing task, but it also has cost of me waiting, switching context, and simply both tasks basically get prolonged. The other approach is bending spoons way. I take this and tackle it myself. I implement the change and potentially ask just for a PR review from a backend engineer. In this way, neither of us has to switch context. Neither of us has to have a downtime in our task, any waiting time or interruption. And simply we get to deliver feature faster, both features, let's say, faster. And we've seen this working way better than being extremely constrained to our technology. But it's not an excuse, and this is not to say that we don't staff team properly. We try, and we always have well-staffed team with enough expertise across the whole tech stack when needed. However, we simply tackle problems on our own if it's a minor adjustment, and this is why we try to have broad knowledge across the whole stack.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to do the same thing with you, Simio. talking about product roles. I would start from an ultra basic but very important question, and then maybe we can get into some of the more specific technical ones that have been asked in the chat. So what does a product manager do specifically, and how is that different from what a growth manager does?
Okay, so this is the question. You can think, so first of all, they are fairly overlapping roles. So they are not roles that are clearly defined and clearly like separated from each other. Oftentimes it happens that the area of overlap is quite big. That said, generally speaking, a product manager is mostly focused on how to build and evolve a product, while also playing some more like strategic bets, like what do we build next? How do we keep creating value for customers? And also how do we grow the product in terms of usage? How do we make our customers develop healthy habits and stuff like that? When it comes to growth, instead, it is slightly more focused. So product, as you can imagine, is quite broad as a scope, let's say. For growth is more focused, and the focus is mainly on growing the product in terms of number of customers, revenue, focusing on the monetization tools, creating some strategies to optimize the pricing tiers and the plans, acquiring new customers and onboarding more users, etc. So you can see this like two sort of approaches, but the truth is that very often there's a fair bit of overlap between them.
Very fair. Now, when it comes to validating, for instance, the UX of a product before and after a launch, what processes or tools do you use as a product lead to do that? And once it's been launched, how do you balance user feedback with the company's pre-existing vision for the product?
Okay. So to validate the UX, we do different sorts of things. So the first thing we do is we try to think very hard about what we are designing, which is, of course, maybe some people take for granted, but I think it's the first step to come up with something good or great, even better. And then we often have usability tests. So we try to get somebody at Bending Spoons who didn't work on the design of that new feature or new initiative to try it on their device and see how they interact with it and see how if I don't know if there's something that's not clear or if they are confused by some aspects of it, and so we have this process of trying to understand where there might be hiccups in the experience, and this happens before launch. During launch, something that happens that is very important is that we try to run very diligent A/B tests to see if adoption, activation for that feature is good compared to the control segment, so compared to what was available before. And of course, like we check not only we check the data about the A/B test, but we check in general the health metrics of the product to check that we didn't break anything major, let's say. Now, when it comes to user feedback, how to balance user feedback with the company's vision, I would say that sometimes they overlap. Like sometimes they are the same thing. Like we want to improve a product so much that people are happy to continue using it in a way, and so in that case the incentives are very aligned. Some other times this might not be as strong as a phenomenon, so the incentives might be slightly contrasting. In that case, we try to be extremely data driven and extremely careful about looking at all sorts of user feedback, like both usage data but also feedback that we received, like on customer support tickets or even online. And we try to be very receptive of that, and be also very critical about, is this something serious that we need to consider, or is this something that probably maybe has some like recency bias that we can try to push through, and like in 2 weeks people will be used to this new approach. This is just like an example, but the concept is the one I described.
Of course, thank you. And another question about, let's say, the day-to-day life of a product team, coming from Egidio. How is the product roadmap managed, and what tools and methods do you use to plan it?
Sure. I think we are a bit maybe we have an uncommon approach to this kind of thing. So we don't have a tool that we push down to every product team. We try to give product teams as much autonomy as they want and as we can. So each product team individually decides what tool they want to use for visualizing the product roadmap, but even what processes they want to adopt to come up with a product roadmap. Then, of course, it frequently happens that we discover something in a team that we want to adopt in another team, another product team. And so we try to have this cross-pollination, which is just a fancy word for people who find out that something is working, try to suggest it to other teams. But still, like we try to give product teams as much freedom as they can, as we can.
That's great. And I have a final question on the topic of product teams. You mentioned cross-pollination, you mentioned interaction. What are the key roles the PM interfaces with in a project? What are, on the other hand, the key hard skills that the PM needs to have himself or herself to make him suitable or make her suitable for the position?
Sure. I would say people who work the most with product managers are data analysts, software engineers, and product designers. There are also other roles that work frequently with product managers, but I would say that if I had to like pick the three roles that work the closest to the product managers, they're probably these three. Sorry, what was the other half of the question?
What hard skills, on the other hand, product managers need to have themselves, let's say, to be great at their role, of course.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were mentioning before about like the expectations for the first few months. I think that demonstrating a good capability for learning, which is not necessarily a hard skill, but it's paramount, is important. More related to hard skills, probably some sort of understanding of how to query a BigQuery database is important, or the ability to come up with intuitive UX designs is also important. A PM needs to be very empathetic towards the customers of their product, so it's important that they are able to come up with experiences that are usable and delightful. The ability to code some quick and dirty tests doesn't harm either.
Great. Now, back to Milana for more of a personal question. Some people have wondered, working in such a complex, challenging, stimulating environment must have led to some big learning moments. So what has been the biggest challenge you faced during your career?
Well, that must have been when I became a lead. It's an interesting story. I just started actually working in Bending Spoons. I think it was maybe 7 or 8 months when our lead had to go on paternity leave. Incidentally, actually, it was like 1 month before we will release a project that we've been working on since I joined. And as he was leaving for paternity leave, he asked me if I would be willing to, take his place while he's off. And I clearly remember being, a bit terrified and a lot excited about the opportunity. And in the end, I accepted. The challenge was massive. I had 5 people to, push through this finish line, and to release within month, bearing all bugs that we found in the final stage, and so on. In the end, we did it. We released on time, and it was huge success. The app had a 4.5 rating on App Store, and it really was a memorable moment for me. But what really stick with me from that point on was that getting this much out of your comfort zone is a massive boost in the growth. And actually, when he came back from paternity leave, he decided to take on a new challenge within bending, and leave me be the new appointed lead of that team, which was really a nice step up for me. And generally, I simply learned that uh, sometimes you're faced with challenges that scare you, and you just do it scared. And it really paid off, and it always does. It always does.
And I think your story is also a great general example of the kind of approach that can drive success at Bending Spoons, in that you were faced with a challenge and you decided to step up. And then, of course, it led to incredible growth.
Absolutely. Embracing a challenge and, unknown here is absolutely a must. And for sure, what I learned with time, what boosts the growth the most.
Yes. Staying curious, staying open. Absolutely. Now, Fede, Milana mentioned, she told us the story of how she became lead. In terms of not progressing in your career, but rather changing in terms of teams or roles within Bending Spoons, is that something that happens? How easy it is? Can you share some information about that?
Sure. First of all, I would say that the priority over how teams are staffed and how roles are filled is ultimately decided by Bending Spoons. And I think this is healthy, as like everybody who works at Bending Spoons has a strong interest in making sure that we are set up for success and to address the most pressing priorities, the most impactful initiatives. And so just because somebody necessarily wants to work on a project, it doesn't mean that automatically that project sees the light of day, because it might be that as a company we disagree that it's important to work on. And so the important thing is that the priority over this decision is ultimately decided by Bending Spoons. That said, I still believe that Bending Spoons probably offers more flexibility than most other companies, in that every few months we run a survey, and we try to survey every spooner, and we ask them if they would be happy to continue working in their current team and in their current role, or if they would prefer working on another project, another product potentially. For instance, I remember a few people who used to work on Splice, our mobile video editing product. And I think some of them have worked on Splice for like 3 or even 4 years in a row. Same team, same project. And they really loved this idea of going very deep on a complex project and knowing every corner of it. Other spooners that I know of are more like dynamic. They prefer changing teams from time to time, or product that they work on. And so they like being exposed to new challenges, new scenarios, new opportunities for learning, because they believe that by seeing a lot of different things, they can learn better that way. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible, depending on company priorities that we were saying, and also on individual preferences. Now, this was for changing like teams and projects. Changing roles instead is a bit less frequent, probably. it's still possible. We don't have any like specific policy that says that you're not supposed to change role. It's very much possible, but just like empirically it happens less frequently because I guess it's just a harder thing to do, right? If I'm a software engineer, it's relatively easier to work on a product and then start working on another one, but doing the same things basically. Whereas if I work as a product manager and then tomorrow I need to start working as a software engineer, there are like all sorts of like hard skills and hard things to know that I need to understand really well, and so this just like doesn't happen as often. Although we really like the idea of creating a culture of generalists, and we try to push on this like T-shaped concept that Lana was suggesting earlier. So we definitely don't have anything against it.
Okay, and now circling back to the product manager role in specific, what qualities do you think are essential to excel? Not just in terms of the skills that we discussed before, but actually something more high level, broader character traits that will help you do well in the role.
Yeah, I think by far the most important thing for a product manager is to have and demonstrate a great sense of ownership. Ownership in terms of how active you are in identifying opportunities, problems, and how you're able to start initiatives that aim at trying to like hunt for those opportunities or solve those problems. So I think ownership is by far the most important one. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of smart people in the world, and the very best ones just like work harder and smarter in all roles, not only in product management, but in product, I think it's particularly true. Another thing that I think is very important is a sense of curiosity for a user's needs and what people actually want to achieve using one of our products. So like, as I was saying earlier, some sort of like empathy for the customer in a sense. I think a sense of like a good ability for planning is also paramount. Like, as we were saying, the ability to start a project and like lead an initiative, but also to be able to clearly explain the characteristics of what an initiative should have, the timeline with which we try to address that initiative or to achieve certain specific milestones, I think is useful, and like a great sense for prioritization, which goes hand in hand with planning, like just like a intuition for something that is really important, and the reasoning capability to assess that something is more important than something else because you can think about it critically. Yeah, so in general, like being resourceful, I think is very useful as a product manager.
That's absolutely accurate. And also, since at Bending Spoons people tend to be quite friendly and helpful, it's also important to leverage other people's insights and things that have worked in other contexts. Never be scared to ask people to help you, to give you, to share with you the information they acquired in their own work. And on this particular topic, I would like to ask Milana a question, in that many people wonder how coaching is provided on the tech stack. What is that process like?
Okay, so we have this like we tend to call it almost Bending Spoons encyclopedia. It's specifically for technology. It's a portal with all the knowledge that we've gathered throughout the years on various technologies, on various tools, and so on. Generally, it relates. This is maintained by Foundations technology that Fede mentioned before. So this platform team that maintains and makes sure that knowledge is always accessible to everyone, and this knowledge portal is used and maintained by all spooners of any tenure, because there's always something to learn. Within this knowledge portal, we also have something we call Spooniversity, which is carefully designed path that prepares new joiners to become T-shaped engineers that we mentioned before. So it's a series of resources, both in terms simply theoretical resources and practices, simple exercises that lead you toward the path of learning first across the board, across the whole tech stack, how to implement a feature. So, for example, you would have some Figma design, certain feature requirements, and you would need to implement first the front end for it. Then you will likely implement some backend logic with some local database, and eventually you will deploy all of these to the cloud and learn a bit about infrastructure. Then within this knowledge portal, you can also dive deeper into specific vertical. So, for example, depending on your curiosity, but also on which team you're assigned on, so what the team needs, you may want to develop front-end expertise in specifically Android, because you'll be working on Android app, in which case there's a tailored path specifically to learn the inside outs, the in depth, basically Android as a branch. Similarly for others. So there's always a mentor who follows you on this path, reviews your PRs and coaches you. And you're also encouraged to contribute with your input, potentially give us feedback on how to improve, what was very well done in the exercise, what could have been done better, and so on. So this is how we mostly train junior engineers. And then, of course, after this path is finished, you start working on the project, and that's where you learn a lot as well. Yeah.
Great. Another thing that many people are wondering about, many people that are here with us tonight, since many of them are in the application process currently, is what does the selection process entail? And in particular, how should they prepare for the technical interviews? Do they need to know specific programming languages or technologies? What is it like?
Clear. So you probably know, but in Bending Spoons, the recruiting process is a bit weirder, let's say, than in most companies. We definitely, first and foremost, look for talent. This means good reasoning skills, a lot of drive, ambition, thirst for knowledge in general. Then when it comes to technical interview, yes, for the most tech roles, you will also have technical interview, but we really are not looking for, very specific knowledge for a specific language or specific experience. We again look for how people think or reason about the problem. Now, even completely inexperienced applicants usually come with some background, right? Like you have finished the uni, or you have studied something, or worked in another company. So we do expect that you come with certain level of knowledge based on your background, but we are not going to necessarily test a programming language or similar. It's going to simply in technical interviews, there is a system design question, which technologies you will use or which language, it doesn't really matter. And if you have a bit more experience, of course, maybe you'll be asked also to compare certain technologies or similar things. But it mostly boils down to the way that you reason and break down the problem, and maybe implementing some basic data structures or similarly. But ultimately, everyone can learn a new language or a new technology, but it's really hard to teach people how to reason. So this is specifically what we are looking for.
That's great. That's great. Now, staying on the topic of the selection process, etc. Simio, do you have any advice for those who want to join Bending Spoons and are maybe currently in the recruiting process?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is don't get too stressed about it. In the sense, not that it's not important, of course, but many spooners that I know didn't join the company on their first attempt. So try your best, be serene and relaxed about it, and good luck with the process. Now, when it comes to more practical advice, I would say we don't look on specific amounts of previous experiences or a specific seniority. This is probably some of the one of the things that people don't know about how we recruit software engineers, especially, but in general, all roles. We look for people who are extremely passionate and driven about what they do and about what Bending Spoons does. And the way we identify this passion and drive is by looking at specific project that the candidate has done in their past, or if they had a startup, or if they joined a specific club, if they were running an initiative and stuff like this. This generally, to us, this signals that this person really wants to achieve something and to work passionately on something. Of course, we give a lot of we appreciate a lot people who research Bending Spoons, so people who know what we do, use our products, are opinionated in how we should improve them, and especially who are aligned with our level of ambition. So my advice would be, don't hesitate to check out the website. I think it's especially the manifesto part is very good at giving you a picture, a real world picture of how the culture is every day at the office, at Bending Spoons in general. Let me see. Well, even if it may seem simple, I would say that the amount of motivation is very important. So we love to see people that are passionate, excited about Bending Spoons, that go the extra mile to make themselves stand out. So these kind of things, I think, really help.
Great. Now, you mentioned culture before. Some people in the chat are wondering, since we have received awards for outstanding culture, etc., what does culture of Bending Spoons mean to you specifically? What are the aspects you like best?
Yeah. Well, maybe my favorite thing about working at Bending Spoons is the level of ambition at the company, which doesn't necessarily mean competition and sometimes people think of ambition as a negative term. I see it as a very positive concept and idea. Every day I work with spooners, I am energized by how much they want to accomplish, how willing they are to put in some extra work to achieve something and build something good that works well, that yields great results, and stuff like this. So, for instance, on Evernote, we're working on Evernote for 2 years now. When we started, we had this dream or goal of improving Evernote a lot, because it had some hiccups in the past, and we really wanted to try to give it a chance of becoming a great product. And after 2 years, I'm so proud of all the people in the team who have contributed, working super hard to make Evernote great. And it's just energizing to me to work with people who share this passion for working on these products so much. And this closely relates to the high pace. So the fact that we work fast, we don't wait, we don't waste time. We love our products and we always strive to improve them. So it's basically impossible to get bored. Let's see. Well, the learning opportunity is also a big one. Like, you work on such like different projects, and every week there's something different that comes up that you need to solve or try to break down into more digestible problems. Well, and lastly, spooners. I mean, spooners are super friendly, super helpful. We do value autonomy a lot, as I was mentioning, but if you're stuck, you'll never find a spooner who tells you, no, I don't have time to help you. They really do their best to help and to try to brainstorm with you and problem solve with you. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. We still have time for one question, and I would like to ask this question to Milana. We touched upon this before, but since people in the chat are wondering, could you clarify a bit more the difference between an individual contributor path and a software engineering lead path? Does one need to become a manager to grow as a software engineer at Bending Spoons? Or can can the bulk of your work still be related to coding, programming, and the like?
Yes. So in short, yes, of course, it can be related to, and I would say really the difference between a lead and the individual contributor is not even that big. I mean, it really depends also on the size of the team, but there is a lot of spooners who at some point became leads because they really needed to, at that point, on that specific project, they really needed to guide the other teammates. They maybe needed to organize, coordinate activities, and simply spend a bit more time in management than in coding. But even then, you still keep coding and you're hands-on because you need to review PRs, you need to teach the new joiners. You never want to become rusty. And then after some point, the company needs strong individual contributors with years of experience on Evernote, for example. And at that point, you're going from lead position to individual contributor. And this is in no way a step down or demotion. It's simply, the company needs individual, or maybe a person wants to become individual contributor again. And if we can if we can comply with this kind of wish, we definitely would do, because in the end, leadership is, you need to lead by example. I think this is one of my favorite things about Bending Spoons, is that people that lead you really, show you the way. And you cannot lead a team unless you're an individual contributor yourself. You need to show, to lead the way. So there's really not a lot of difference, I would say, in depending on the team size as well. But it can also become a much more a managerial role, let's say, if the team grows to become 20 or more people. So it really depends. But in the end, the success in Bending Spoons really doesn't depend on whether you have aspirations to become lead or individual contributor. As long as you're very ambitious, hardworking, and really love your job, I think you can become successful through various different paths.
Thank you, Milana. Now, that's unfortunately a wrap. Our time is over. I apologize for the questions we didn't have time to answer, but we'll certainly provide our answers in the future. Thank you, Milana, and thank you, Federico, for joining me. Thank you, people at home, for listening to this, for watching our stream. And best of luck in all your future endeavors. And I wish you all a very pleasant evening. Cheers.
Thank you all very much, and good luck.